Hello, welcome back. Top tip video number 2. This is regarding, sorry about the squeaky chair, I need to get that fixed. It's referring to the tail wheel. It's not a small part of the build, but it can be a little bit fiddly. So just to help you out at the end of the build actually, because when you initially build this kit, the tail wheel assembly, which is only a small number of parts, is part of the build right at the beginning. Obviously it's part of the fuselage, which is section 42-43. So this is the back end of the fuselage that glues onto there. And you glue that onto there before you actually put the fuselage sides together. I suppose in theory you could put this bit on afterwards, but either way you're going to put it on before you paint the model. So you've got this bit and you've got this bit. This is the bit that holds this tail wheel leg in place, which you put in right at the end of the build, which is on section 232, which is right down here. Where's it gone? 232 is here. And it shows the model all assembled and finished, and you basically plug it into this socket inside the fuselage. Doesn't look difficult. It isn't, but it can be, because this socket, it's only got a tiny little hole, which I'll show you in a minute. And getting this leg into that little hole can be quite fiddly, especially if you don't prepare this bit before when you're building it. So imagine you've got this socket, if you like, and that's the leg, and it fits in there, just like that. And that's quite a tight fit, is that? If you look at it from above now, I hope the video camera can pick this up. It's splayed those two parts of the moulding apart, putting that in there. So if you can imagine when this is glued into these two halves, I'll dry fit it now if I can. It's quite fiddly to do it with that when you've not actually glued this part in first. I'll do my best. So imagine you've got this assembly. There we go, like that. Oh, hold on a minute. You've got this assembly. Honestly. Because it's not glued in. I'm doing it wrong-handed now. Let's try again. So you've got this assembly. I'll do it this way around. Like so. So imagine that's glued up solid and there's no give in this socket whatsoever. And your model's all painted and this is all painted and you want to put that in there. Sounds great, doesn't it? It can be fiddly because it has got a little channel in there. If you look, it's got like a groove in this fuselage, if you like. You need to get used to where that is, and you feel it. You feel it just there. You just slide it, slot it and push. At the moment it's all giving because it's not glued together, but when it's all glued together, that socket can be really, really tight, and it's kind of a firm. You can't push down, you've got to push down and then in like that, if that makes sense. Because you're doing that, you're putting an awful lot of pressure on this tail wheel, and if it's painted up, you're going to mark it, and it's quite tricky to get in there. So what I do is, well, you can do one of two things. Get familiar with how it actually does fit into this socket, the angle it goes in and everything. Just thin this down a bit, just take some plastic off it and thin it down. So it doesn't matter if it goes in reasonably loose because you can glue it in anyway and then you can take it in to put it out, whatever. But make sure you can get that in easily and familiarise yourself with how it fits in. So that's one thing. People may not find that a problem, but I just found it could cause you a bit of grief later on in the world. So that's that part. Now the next part is, the tail wheel comes in 3 pieces. You've got the actual leg itself. Well, you've got 4 pieces because I've glued these two together. They come in 2 halves, but I've just glued them together to demonstrate this. So what you would do, I would assume you would glue this together and I would paint that as a separate item if I was normally building this. And then you would do the same with the wheel. You'd paint the hub of the wheel and then you'd paint the tyre. And then you'd introduce the 2 parts together. And in theory you could just like push it in there and leave it. But that falls out. It's a nightmare. You can't Yeah, it falls out. Any pressure on it whatsoever, it falls out. So then you've got the inner position where you've got to then glue that wheel into there with it all painted up, which I don't think is an ideal solution really, because you just end up putting glue onto paint and then it looks a mess. So what I did, I built this thing as a complete assembly. So, but don't do it until you've got to the end of the build, because it has got a flat on the tyre. So you need to put the tailwheel assembly in and then put with the rest of the aircraft on its front undercarriage, and align the flat first before you do this, before you build this part. Hence why you need to be able to get in and out of that socket quite easily. So once you've got the tailwheel orientation correct, glue out what I've done, it's up to you, glue the whole assembly together so it doesn't move, and then paint it. So what I did then was spray the whole thing silver and then picked out the tyre with a brush afterwards, and it's dead easy to do. And that worked then, it doesn't fall off, it can't fall apart, and it looks nice and neat and tidy. So that's my top tip number 2. Hope that helps you out, and I'll see you in a bit.